and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and today I'm going to be sharing with you the books that I really want to read. Or do I? This is the Reluctant TBR Tag, and I was tagged a couple months ago by Tiffany at Beautiful Minutia, and most people have finished it, at least a month ago or so, but I'm just now getting around to it. And I really wanted to do this tag, but it's just taken me time to get to it, which is kind of appropriate because that's what this tag is all about. The books that you want to get to, but you haven't yet for one reason or another. So let's get started. The first one is a soft DNF. And I guess this is technically a DNF, but also technically not. This was a book, Gilead, by Marilyn Robinson, that a while back I did try a chapter with. And I had 3 books and I was trying to figure out which one I wanted to read next. And so I tried a chapter in all 3 of them. And I ended up choosing a different book rather than this one. Not because I wasn't enjoying it, but because I wasn't in the mood for it at the time. And this is definitely one that would fit for another question later on in this tag that I have to be in the mood for. So that is one that I DNF'd, but not permanently. I definitely want to get back to it and read it for real this time. And it keeps popping up on my monthly TBRs and I haven't read it yet, but surely I will someday. The next one is, I've read another book by this author and didn't enjoy it. And for that, I'm going to go with, where is it? Mrs. Lincoln's Dressmaker by Jennifer Chiaverini, I think. And first of all, that cover is really beautiful. I've read another book by her. I think it was called Mistress of Numbers, about Ava Lovelace, who was the daughter of Byron, and even more so is known for being the first person, and also woman, to create a computer. And she did that in the mid-19th century. And it was interesting from a historical perspective and from just her being an interesting person. But the writing style was a little bit slow and a little bit dry. And so even though I know this is probably will be the same situation, about interesting people and interesting circumstances and an interesting story, I'm not picking it up because I'm thinking that it will be kind of slow and maybe a little dry. So that's why I haven't fully embraced reading this one, even though it's been on my shelf for a while. Number 3, it's brand new and you don't know when you'll get to it. And that is Spectre in the Glass House by Jamie Jo Wright. I really do like Jamie Jo Wright's books, most of the ones that I've read by her, but she writes 2 a year and I just haven't been able to keep up with her writing. I haven't read any of her most recent ones. I've read one this year and I realized, if I want to catch up with her writing at any point in the future, I need to read like at least 3 books by her in a year. So that definitely did not happen this year. Don't know if it will happen next year. I'm woefully behind, but I've heard really good things about Spectres in the Glass House and it sounds really interesting. So does the Barlow Theater one. Both of those I definitely want to read. I just haven't yet. Number 4, the cover is painfully ugly, and that's this one, Pamela by Samuel Richardson. Now, there are other reasons why I'm reluctant to read this that would also fit for other questions on here. 1, it's kind of long. 2, it's just a little bit intimidating, and I've heard mixed things about this. I would really be reading it more for academic, intellectual reasons than for sheer enjoyment reasons, I think. So yeah, that's another reason why I haven't been jumping to pick this one up, even though I want to read it. Number 5, a classic that might be good for you, but you're not that interested. So along those lines of Pamela, there are others on my shelf like that, and several of the books I'm going to mention would fit this category. But one that comes to mind is War and Peace. And this actually answers the very next question as well. It's humongous and intimidating. Humongous and intimidating. Now, let's see. It's not the longest book that I've ever read by any stretch. This edition is 690 some pages, 696. I read Les Miserables earlier this year. It was 1,200 pages. I have read 700-page books before, absolutely. I read Anna Karenina. I loved it. I think it's the war part of it. The war part of it holds me back because I don't like books about war, and it just seems so long. Like, is it all about war? Because I don't like that at all. So I haven't actually picked it up. I like Tolstoy. I like long books. This one, I don't know. I feel like it would be a good book to read, but it's humongous and intimidating, and that's why I haven't really gotten to it yet. Number 7, you feel like you need to read it because it's hyped, but you're not excited. Now for this one, I have to say, first of all, let me preface this by saying I don't generally care if a book is hyped or not. That doesn't make me want to read it. In fact, I rarely read brand new books as they come out if they're really hyped. It doesn't interest me unless the hype sticks around for several years and people are still talking about it and it becomes more of an influential book. And the more I hear about it, depending on what I hear about it and who's talking about it and what they're saying about it, and if I trust their reading recommendations or not, then I'll read it. So hype means very little to me. But one book that has kind of stuck around and seems to have justified the hype is A Man Called Ove. I believe that's how you say his name. And I do want to read it. I've never read anything by Frederick Buckman. From what I've heard, I don't think I would want to read everything by Frederick Buckman. So I really don't have any interest in reading everything by him, but I do want to read this one, which I don't know. I guess it's not his debut novel, but this is definitely one that made a big splash when it was written, and now it's a movie and all of this stuff. So I do want to read this one. It's one that has kind of stuck around in terms of influence and whatever. So the hype seems to have been justified. So I feel like I should read it for that reason. Number 8, you need to be in a specific mood to enjoy it. And the one that I picked for that is The Road, because I think that this book is a bit of a mood in itself. And also I feel like books that are like literary fiction that is kind of on the edge, on the cutting edge of modern literary fiction sort of thing is not my cup of tea. And I definitely have to be in a mood to challenge myself to want to read it, or I have to be challenged by someone else to read it, which is one reason why I really like to do reading challenges and readathons, because they kind of give me that nudge to read something that I wouldn't reach for unless someone was challenging me to read it. So this is one of those things, one of those books, The Road by Cormac McCarthy, and it is on my TBR for November, and I do want to get to it, but yeah, I've got to be in the mood for it. This one is for the Chantel Read Your Shelf Challenge. So I have successfully completed all the prompts in that book to date, in that challenge to date, and it would be a shame if I fell off that wagon on the 11th month. So I am determined to read this one. So we'll see. And then number 9, you are on the fence about continuing this series. And that would be probably The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. I'm definitely on the fence. I want to continue the series, but at the same time, I don't have to. I enjoyed the writing. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the way the story was told and the way that it unfolded and everything. I enjoyed the humor. So there was a lot that I liked about it. And I don't think that I would hate the experience of reading the next books in the series. However, I will say I disagreed with the treatment of murder. And since all of the stories are about like investigating murders and stuff, I feel like that kind of might get in the way of my enjoyment of them. So it makes me not too keen to pick them up and set aside other things that might be on my TBR just to read them. So I'm not against reading them, but I'm not super hyped about reading them either. And then a book that's been on my TBR for a very long time. I have owned these books for a really, really, really long time. One is The Inferno and the other is Paradise by Dante. And I've had them for a really long time. And they're really beautiful little copies and I love them. Never read them. Number 11, a genre that is outside your comfort zone. And I have this book that I picked up used within the past year, I think, Deadline by Randy Alcorn. I picked it up because I have read nonfiction by Randy Alcorn that I really, really loved. And I've read also one fiction by him, which is Safely Home, which I really, really loved. But that one was more just like a regular fiction story. It wasn't like suspense or anything like that. And it was very, very, very good. Really loved that book so much, which made me pick up other books by him, including this one, Deadline. And I don't actually even know what genre this would be. I guess it says on the back, it says suspense. So it's definitely giving off that suspense vibe, or like speculative or apocalyptic. I'm not really sure. And none of that is my cup of tea. None of that is like, oh yes, I'm gonna love it. I'm really just not. I don't know. I don't hate suspense, and I have enjoyed some good suspense books. So it's not that I don't want to read it. It's just not a genre that I go to. Like, I really prefer just regular general fiction or something along those lines. Suspense is not my favorite, but I do want to read that eventually. And then despite owning it, you'll likely never read it. And another book that I already showed you. These two little gems. Don't know if I'll ever get to those. I have them, but you know. Number 13, Only Out of Obligation. So a book that is on your TBR only because you feel obliged to, because it's for a book club or because someone recommended it to you or gave it to you, whatever. That does occasionally happen to me, that someone will give me a book. And I have learned about myself that I don't like book clubs where the book is assigned and everybody reads the book and it's on like a monthly schedule kind of thing. I've learned that about myself, because then I tend to feel pressured to read the book, and it's usually because, you know, other people are picking the books and like you're part of the club. So the whole basis is that you're all going to read it together, but it might be books that you wouldn't want to read. So sure, most of the time, the way things are structured, you usually have the right to opt out. Well, I think my history has shown that more often than not, especially this past year, a couple of different book clubs that I've been a part of, I ended up just not, because not that the books that were chosen didn't interest me. Like one I'm in is a Facebook book club, and they have pre-assigned books. They figure them out all a year in advance. And I only read like 2 or 3 of them this year, and I opted out of the rest of them just because I had too many other things that I wanted to read in that month, that I wanted to read for myself and for other reasons. And the ones that they picked weren't on my TBR for any reason. So I didn't read them. So I learned for myself, I've kind of weaned myself from feeling obliged to read a book, just because like I've decided I don't do book clubs where the book is assigned. If there's a prompt, and so you can choose the book for the prompt, that I'm cool with. Or if it's like a group read or something that is just a one-off group read, those I enjoy. So I enjoy that book club kind of discussion that happens. But the difference is I chose to read that book. It wasn't told, okay, this is the book you're going to read. So there's not like that sense of obligation. And even in that scenario, if I start the book and I don't love it, then I don't ever feel obligated to read it in a group read. So yeah, that's a really long answer to the question. But the point is, anymore, I don't read out of a feeling of obligation. So I have been given books before, particularly by like family members or friends or whatever, as gifts. And some of them I've hung on to, and I hope to eventually read them. Others I have eventually gotten rid of because I realize I will never read them. So even that doesn't really give me a strong sense of obligation that I have to read something, because that seems to suck all the enjoyment out of it. If I feel like I have to read it, then I won't enjoy it. So I don't generally put myself under obligation to read books that I don't want to read, if that makes sense. And then number 14, a book that had negative reviews, so that made you less excited about reading it. And this is one that I picked up at a library sale earlier this year, called Second Impressions by Ava Farmer. And it is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, or it's a continuation of the story. I think it's like a sequel to Pride and Prejudice. And I loved the cover of the book, and I love everything that it says about it, like on the cover and the blurb and everything. And I was very excited to read it, and I was considering it for Jane Austen July, but then I looked on Goodreads and I saw a lot of reviews. A lot of people just said it was just too dry and too pedantic, like too many long descriptions and detailed stuff and explanations of life at that time. Obviously, the author did a great deal of research, but it was more like her research than it was a novel telling a story. And so that makes me a little bit less interested. I still want to try it. I just haven't yet. And it kind of got bumped down my priority list. And question number 15, actually, to be perfectly honest, confuses me a little bit because the prompt is a book that hasn't come out yet. But I wouldn't be reluctant to read a book that hasn't come out yet. Like, why would it be on my reluctant TBR? I'm struggling to understand this one. So I don't know that I'm really getting the point of this question, but a book that is coming out that's not out yet that will be on my TBR is The Muse of Maiden Lane by Mimi Matthews. It's coming out, I think, very soon, in a couple weeks. And I read her most recent release in that series earlier this year. Miriam Elizabeth and I did a buddy read of that and both really enjoyed it. And I am looking forward to this. I think it's the final installment in this series. And I'm really looking forward to reading it, but not reluctantly by any means. I'm very excited about putting that on my TBR and getting to read that one. So that is my reluctant TBR. I hope you enjoyed. What are some books that are reluctantly on your TBR that you feel like you should read for whatever reason, but you're not really super keen on it, or you keep putting it off for one reason or another? Let me know. Are any of these books, should I move them from the reluctant to read category, or I should be excited about reading category and put them on my very next TBR and get to them? Let me know. And I will talk to you next time. Bye.